Good morning. Thank you so much for being here today as we introduce the new Colorado Circular Communities Enterprise, or C3 for short. As Kendra mentioned, my name is Erin Gerard. I am an Outreach and Technical Assistance Specialist with the C3 team, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Liz Kuhn and Kathleen Hines. And we're so excited to share with you all what the C3 team has been working on the last 6 months as we've been developing the new C3 program. So just for a brief overview of our agenda today, I'm going to first start with an overview of C3, including its development, how it all came to be, how it differs from our 2 pre-existing grant programs, as well as a high-level overview of our first 5-year strategic plan. Then I'm going to pass it over to Liz, who will be introducing our funding opportunities under C3, as well as our public sector technical assistance program. And then finally, Kathleen will present our 2 private sector technical assistance programs and wrap things up for us before we open it up for Q&A. As Kendra mentioned, please make sure you're submitting all your questions using the Q&A function. All right, so welcome to C3. Thank you so much again for taking time out of your day to be here. I believe on last count, we had over 350 people registered for today's webinar. So I know it's been long and waited and people are eager to hear about the program. So thank you again for being here. C3's mission is really quite simple. It is just to advance the state's transition to a circular economy. So I wanted to really, start with kind of a bit of a definition of a circular economy, just to make sure that we're all starting on the same page. And so you're aware of what definition we're utilizing for the program. So a circular economy recognizes that every material has value, and we really want to be capturing that material and keeping it circulating within the state for as long as possible. A circular economy therefore uses processes and systems that are inherently restorative and regenerative by design. They enable resources to maintain their highest value for as long as possible, and then are disposed of properly at their end of life. And finally, they aim to eliminate waste through the superior design of both products and business models. So with C3, we're really expanding beyond just a waste diversion mindset. While diversion is it's still a part of circularity, we're really looking for projects that are using more of a system-focused approach and considers the entire lifetime of the material in question and how that material can be captured and recaptured throughout its lifetime. So what is C3? That really brings us to an overview of the program, how it can help you. So C3 is Colorado's statewide enterprise program, meaning it runs like a state-run business would. It's dedicated to supporting Colorado's communities, businesses, nonprofits, for-profits, tribal entities, schools, and institutions of higher learning, really any entity within the state of Colorado in helping them advance the state's transition to a circular economy. So we have 2 main resources available through the C3 program. They are funding assistance and technical assistance. C3 is funded through landfill tipping fees. So every bit of waste that goes to landfill in the state of Colorado, whether on the ton or in the yard, there's a fee that's placed on that, and it goes directly to the C3 cash fund. So there's no allocation of funding from the general fund or by the state legislature. The C3 program is administered by the C3 program staff within the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, or CDPHE for short. So myself, all of my colleagues, we're all CDPHE employees charged with the administration of the program. And then finally, we do receive guidance and oversight from a 13-member board of directors. The board of directors are all subject matter experts within the field of circularity and the circular economy within Colorado. We can drop the link to the board's webpage within the chat if you'd like to read more about their bios and who's a part of our board. And then ultimately, the board is the one to approve the allocation of funding for the program. So some of you might be wondering, what's happened to the RREO and FWRD program? Others might be saying, what is RREO and FWRD? Never even heard of those acronyms. So just for a brief overview of, really how C3 was developed and what happened to our 2 pre-existing programs. So C3 was developed as a result of House Bill 1449. It was passed during the 2024 legislative session, so less than a year ago now. So a lot has happened within a year. And essentially what this bill did is it combined our two pre-existing grant programs, the Recycling Resources Economic Opportunity Program, or RREO, along with the Front Range Waste Diversion Enterprise, or FWRD for short, all under one umbrella for the Colorado Circular Communities Enterprise. So just starting with RREO, just taking a look at, really what that program was and, the differences with C3 now. So RREO is, or was our elder of the grant programs. It was first established in 2007, so it had been around for a little while. The two main things that were offered under RREO were grants and rebates for free public drop-off sites. There was approximately $3 million available appropriated annually. Now, RREO was not an enterprise program, so the funding was allocated by the state fiscal year. So that did provide or create some limitations with some of the grant projects and the grant awards, because really you only had 1 year to complete your project. So it was a bit of a limitation on, larger infrastructure type projects that all the funding had to be spent within a year. And then finally, RREO did receive oversight from two different boards. There was the Pollution Prevention Advisory Board and their assistance committee that helped with kind of the oversight of the program and the selection and awarding of projects. Next, we had the Front Range Waste Diversion Program. This one was a bit newer, first established in 2020, and it was specifically dedicated to the 13 Front Range counties. So, Greater Colorado was not eligible for this program. The main types of assistance from FWRD were grants as well as technical assistance. There was a specific program that we'll be talking about a bit later for public sector assistance. There was a lot more funding available with FWRD, approximately $15 million annually. Now, since FWRD was an enterprise, those funds were continuously allocated. So it meant that projects could, span beyond just one fiscal year. They could take, up to 2 years, 3 years, however long was necessary and was written into the contract in order to complete the project. So it allowed for some, larger infrastructure projects to be completed. And we really wanted to extend that benefit to the rural communities in Greater Colorado within the state. So by transitioning to C3, now that it's a statewide enterprise, Greater Colorado is able to take is able to benefit from that enterprise status. So FWRD was also received oversight from a 13-member board of directors. So we had 3 different groups providing oversight for these 2 different programs. So by combining the 2 programs, we were really able to streamline the administration, streamline things for the public. Now you only really need to pay attention to timelines and communication from one program rather than weighing the 2. We'll have approximately $18 million of funds that are continuously allocated. And like I mentioned, we do receive oversight from that 13-member board of directors. All right, so just for a very high-level timeline of the development of C3. So House Bill 1449 was passed in May of 2024. That bill basically stated that C3 was going to go into effect on July 1 at the start of the fiscal year. At that point, the FWRD funds transferred to the C3 cash fund. Now, these first 6 months, we've really been trying to, develop the program, take lessons learned from the 2 pre-existing grant programs, and get things up and running again. Part of that process was identifying and selecting our new board of directors. So the first board of directors meeting was in October of 2024. And at that point, all of the open FWRD contracts were transferred to C3. So there was no, lapse in contract there. And then finally, RREO, while there's no more, RREO RFAs, there's no more, new things happening. The program will officially repeal in October of 2025. All of the current open RREO projects will complete by the end of August of 2025. And then if there's any remaining funds left in the balance, that'll get transferred to C3 at the end of September. All right, so part of our development of the C3 program was a restructuring of our internal C3 team. And I really just wanted to provide a high-level overview of this since it does impact a little bit how you might relate to the program. So under the overarching banner of the C3 team, we have two different units. Myself, Liz, Kathleen, we're all part of the Outreach and Technical Assistance Unit, or OTA for short. Our role is really to help with applicants developing their applications, helping you kind of develop your proposal, and provide a lot more hands-on support on the pre-application side of things. So we're able to do a lot more than we previously could under RREO and FWRD. So, when you reach out, filling out inquiry forms on the website, that's all coming to our team, and we're there to assist you in kind of navigating the C3 program. On the other side of the house, we have the Grants and Enterprise Management Unit, or GEMS. For those of you who maybe previously had a grant, either through RREO or FWRD, this might be the unit that you're more familiar with. So kind of where that transition is, basically, once you've submitted an application, that then goes over to the GEM unit. So they're there to help with the drafting of scopes of work once your project is selected, getting the contract executed, and then they'll be your main point of contact throughout the entire contract period. So monitoring your project, getting reimbursed, all of that great stuff. All right, and then lastly, I just wanted to provide a little bit of information regarding our C3 strategic plan. So the first C3 strategic plan for the first 5 years was approved in November. It is available on our website. You can go on and read the full plan. I highly encourage that, since many of our funding opportunities and different programs are directly related to our strategic plan. If you haven't gotten a chance to, please go on and read the full plan. We have 3 main goals, or strategic goals, with the first 5 years. We want to first increase participation in the state's circular economy through conducting outreach throughout the state, developing confidence in the state's circular economy, and increasing access to the state's circular economy. Second is to reduce material consumption through less consumption and the promotion of reuse through different projects and programs. And then also supporting sustainable product design, program design type projects that incorporate less resources and are reducing the use of resources from the starting point. And then finally, increasing the material capture for in-state marketability. So the main 3 strategies for that are developing regional partnerships, decreasing material contamination of what's collected, and increasing the state's circular economy infrastructure, especially in rural parts of the state or in greater Colorado, where there's less infrastructure available right now. And at that point, I'm going to hand it over to Liz.
Thank you, Erin. So I'll be diving into the opportunities that the C3 program has available. We have a few different options. We'll have funding, just as we did under the FWRD and RREO programs. We also have a technical assistance program for the public sector that I'll be going over. And then later I'll hand it off to Kathleen, who will talk a little bit more about our private sector opportunities. So first, I'm sure the question that most of you have is, how is funding going to work under the C3 program? If you're aware of the FWRD and RREO funding programs prior to this, and Erin spoke to this a little bit, we used to have rounds of applications where we would open up applications for a short period of time. You could apply within that window, and then once that time period was closed, we would choose the higher scoring applications to be funded. And one very exciting thing, hopefully for all of you and definitely for us, is that we will no longer be doing rounds of applications under the C3 program. So we'll have funding opportunities available on an ongoing basis, which takes hopefully away a lot of the time constraints that many people tend to have surrounding grant rounds, and it allows for a very well thought out project. So applications for some of our funding opportunities will be open and ready to apply on the C3 website later this month, and we don't anticipate those applications to close at any given date. As for who can apply, local governments, tribes, nonprofits, for-profits, institutes of higher education like colleges and universities, and public and private schools are all eligible for funding. A few other requirements related to some of the entity types that I listed. First, you must be registered and in good standing with the Colorado Secretary of State. You must also maintain good standing with all regulatory programs, and that includes CDPHE, EPA, and OSHA. And you must be in good standing with the Colorado Department of Revenue. And you must also comply with all federal, state, and local permitting, zoning, and code requirements. So really anything that is going to contribute to the advancement of the circular economy is eligible for C3 funding. That's kind of the overarching thing that we're looking for. Some examples that we have listed here: reuse, repair, recovery, sustainable design, source reduction, collection, recycling, composting. Really, the list does go on. And this is not exhaustive by any means of every type of funding that we'll approve under the program, and ultimately, it's that advancement of the circular economy that we're really looking for when it comes to the purpose of the project that you're applying for. And I really want to note and stress more than anything else that priority will be given to projects that align with the C3 strategic plan that Erin talked about earlier. It doesn't mean that you are not eligible for a project because you don't directly match the plan. It's just that's kind of how we're going to be prioritizing these projects, especially larger projects in the future. And that strategic plan, again, is available on our website with the goals and the strategies and activities laid out. If your project idea fits well within that, and especially if it hones in on some of our more specific activities, there's a much higher chance that your project will be prioritized within our various opportunities. So highly, highly suggest looking at that strategic plan before you apply for any tier of funding in order to ensure that you're aligned with the strategic plan. So applications for funding are anticipated to open at late February 2025, so at the very, very end of this month. If you want to receive an update on this funding as soon as it's available, I highly suggest signing up for our email list. It's on our website, and I believe we also have a QR code at the end of this presentation as well for that. So how can you apply for funding? There are going to be 3 tiers that we have for funding, and those tiers are going to be based on the amount of funds that you request, the duration of the project, as well as the impact or scope of your project. So based on those 3 things, your project could fit into any one of our 3 tiers, and that will determine the type of application that you'll be filling out. And I'll go into a full detail on all 3 of these tiers soon. But ultimately, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all application where you put in your information and we determine what tier you're in. You will be making that determination. You can always speak with us, talk with us, ask questions to see where you fit, but ultimately you'll be making that determination. And I do want to note, this is a question that we've been getting. Similar to our previous grant programs with FWRD and RREO, funding will be allocated through a reimbursement process. So that means that you'll be making your purchases up front. And once that purchase is complete, you've paid for whatever it is, then the C3 program will reimburse those costs afterwards. It's typically not a super long process once you have all of the necessary documentation that you purchased that item or that paid your contractor or whatever it is. But it is something to keep in mind as you move forward with applying for C3 funding. So I want to give a quick overview of the 3 tiers of funding before we get into the specifics of each of these. But before I go over that, I really want to note and highlight that applicants are going to be limited to 1 grant award per calendar year. This means that you can apply as many times as you want for different tiers of funding. But if you receive an award, you're not eligible for funding until the next calendar year. And our reasoning for that is not to be restrictive in any way. It's just to ensure that whatever you're applying for is something that is sustainable. We want to make sure that you're thinking about everything that you need to be successful in enhancing the circular economy, and we want to ensure that we can get you there as soon as possible. So the purpose behind this is really to have a holistic approach to applying for funds rather than thinking about what you need right now and getting that right now and thinking about everything else later. So that's for all 3 of the tiers of funding as well. So let's say you receive a mini grant, and then you would be ineligible for all 3 types of funding for the remainder of that calendar year. So all that being said, the smallest tier of funding that we have is mini grants. These are really intended for very small, quick purchases, something like signage for your recycling drop-off site, a few collection bins that you need to replace, or even funding for a small truck. It's not limited to equipment, but those are just some good examples of small, quick purchases. Now, impact grants are a larger dollar amount than mini grants, and I'll go into that in a bit. They are intended for projects that will truly improve your entity's ability to enhance circularity for your community or your target audience. So examples of this could be something like a facility upgrade, or a behavior change campaign, or large equipment purchases, things that will really help your entity enhance circularity for your market or community. And then we have capacity building grants, which are projects that are set to greatly enhance circularity outside of just your audience. They will enhance circularity within a large region or within the entire state. So some examples of this would be a transfer station or a sorting facility or a compost facility, something that's really going to impact a large portion of the state. And it might require partnerships, it might require a little bit more planning, but it's truly going to enhance that capacity of circularity within the state. So that's an overview of the 3 tiers, and now we can kind of get into some of the specifics. So first off, we'll talk about mini grants. Like I said, these are really intended for small, quick purchases, and that's specifically projects that are less than $50,000. We don't necessarily have a minimum, that's the maximum. So if you have a project that's $50,001, if you apply for a mini grant, you would only receive up to $50,000, and you would have to come up with that $1 yourself. We also require that the contract term is no more than 6 months. And that means that once you've been approved, you've worked out a contract, you've signed all the T's, you've dotted all the I's, you have 6 months from that date of contract execution to complete your project. So some examples of eligible expenses, and not an exhaustive list again, but it would be things like equipment and supplies, signage, outreach and education, event space fees, marketing and promotion, repairs, and contractual labor expenses. One thing that is not eligible is operating expenses for existing programs. So applying for $50,000 towards some staff that you already have that's working on a current program is not something that we will support with mini grants. When it comes to applications, they will be open and available on the C3 website. You don't necessarily need to talk to a member of our team in order to apply. There will be a required informational video that you will have to watch to apply that will be available on the website as well. There will be manuals available that explain every detail of what our team is looking for in the application. It'll also have information on how we're going to score these applications, and there will be sample contract templates on there as well. So we really want to make it as easy as possible for you to have all of the information that you need for a successful application. And I highly suggest, and I will say that for all 3 of these grant opportunities, that once you're ready to apply, or even before you're thinking about applying, but you have a project idea in mind, to look through the grant manuals that'll be posted on the website at the end of this month before you start to fill out an application. So the next tier above mini grants would be impact grants. These are awards between $50,000 and $250,000. So again, if you want to apply for this grant and it's a little bit over $250,000, you would be required to cover the amount that's above the maximum. So this is for a contract term that is no more than 18 months. So again, 18 months from the day of contract execution, you should have finalized your project. Now, again, the purpose for these impact grants is really for increasing your ability to impact and enhance the circular economy for your local community or your target audience. Some eligible expenses that might help you do that would be staffing, supplies and equipment, contractual costs, infrastructure. You can do marketing and communication, policy R&D. There's really a lot of different things that are eligible. And again, this list is not exhaustive, but there are some ineligible expenses that I really want to point out. Leases or rent for real property, travel, subscriptions, memberships, scholarships, anything outside of the state of Colorado, lobbying, and fundraising events are all ineligible expenses for impact grants. Now, as for applying for this type of grant, it is similar to the mini grants. We'll have a separate application than the mini grants posted on our website. You don't necessarily have to talk to a member of our team in order to apply, but you will have to watch that pre-recorded informational video beforehand. We'll also have those grant manuals on the website for these types of grants. It'll explain everything we're looking for, and hopefully all of the resources that we have posted should help answer hopefully at least some of the questions that you might have, but you're always welcome to speak with a member of the ODA team about your specific project. So again, those applications will be open at the very, very end of February, and if you sign up for our email list, you'll be one of the first to know about them when they open. And then lastly, the third of our tiers that we have is capacity building grants. These are for requests that are over $250,000, and we are really intending large catalytic projects that will have a significant impact on the circular economy to be set aside for these capacity building grants. You absolutely must meet one or more of C3's strategic goals in order to apply for these grants. And it's applications are very different with this. They will only be available upon invitation from the C3 team. We will not have applications posted on the website. So if you're interested in applying for this grant tier and you believe that your project idea will have a significant impact outside of just your target market or your community and really on the state of Colorado as a whole, then please submit an office hour inquiry on the C3 website. You can meet with a member of the ODA team. We'll be happy to speak with you about your project and discuss its alignment with C3 strategic goals. And also to add to that, rather than an official application, capacity building grants will be a collaborative effort with members of C3's ODA team to create a proposal that will then go in front of the C3 Board of Directors for approval. So we will be co-creating that project and that proposal, and then we'll present it to the Board of Directors when it's complete. So that is funding in a nutshell. If you have any questions about the specifics of what this funding is and how it works, we'll have that Q&A at the end of this, and you can ask questions. I just want to let you know that we will not be answering questions on anything very specific to a project you have in mind. So if you have questions on something that you want to do, please feel free to reach out to the ODA team with our office hour inquiry form on the website. So like I said, that was funding. And now I want to move on to one of our technical assistance programs. This one is specifically for the public sector, and it is called the Strategic Technical Expertise for the Public Sector Program, shortened to STEPS, which is really intended to help communities take the next steps in their journey towards circularity. And by communities specifically and public sector, I mean local governments, and that includes cities and counties and unincorporated areas. It also includes tribes and public K-12 school districts. So this program is not a funding program. It could lead to funding, but it itself is not funding for any capital projects. It instead offers completely free consulting services from experts in the field for planning circularity initiatives. Our main consultant and expert in the field is Resource Recycling Systems, or RRS. They're our primary consultant for this program. They've worked on all of our past projects, and we have other consultants available for very specific expertise to ensure that your community has access to experts in all the fields. So some of you may have heard of the Technical Assistance Service Provider, or TASP program that existed under Forward. That was only available to the 13 Front Range counties, and with the passage of C3, we decided to keep that program, rename it, and expand it to enhance it to serve the entire state. And we wanted to also make it a little bit more accessible by removing the application process and offering ongoing support, which I'll get into in a second. So speaking of the TASP program and past projects that we've had with that, I wanted to highlight 3 projects. We've had lots, but these are 3 pretty successful projects that I just wanted to go through so you can kind of get an idea of what it used to be and what we want to continue. So first off, we have the City of Lafayette. This was a feasibility study that TASP conducted for developing a universal recycling ordinance for the commercial and multifamily sectors. And on June 4th, 2024, this led to the Lafayette City Council successfully passing that universal recycling ordinance. And that actually just went into effect at the beginning of this year. A really good example of a regional project, we can absolutely have projects where multiple communities come together for one. And a good example of that is the South Metro region. They combined the efforts of the cities of Centennial, Inglewood, Sheridan, and Littleton, and provided a comprehensive analysis of waste services, and then later developed strategies for improving waste management. They're working on that second part right now. The project is still in progress, but they did recently hold a successful 2-day South Metro Waste Summit, which discussed the findings of their comprehensive analysis with representatives of participating cities and allowed them to answer questions and all of that. And then lastly, we have the town of Superior. This project was for organics diversion and organized collection assessment. And that led to the town board unanimously voting for pay-as-you-throw services with every week trash and recycling and every other week organics collection. So these are just some examples of some past projects that we've had. And of course, there are other projects that could be eligible. So some examples of projects that you could consider if you're interested in the STEPS program, there are plenty of other ideas that you can come to us with as well, would be things like a behavior change campaign or a waste diversion action plan or a waste characterization study, stakeholder engagement, ordinance planning and program planning. These are all things that we can absolutely help you and your community with if that's something that you're interested in. And just like funding, projects that align with the strategic plan, especially the larger projects that'll take a lot longer, those will be prioritized. So we'll have a few different levels of assistance with the STEPS program, a few different pathways that you can go if you're interested. So I'll go through them with the least time intensive to the most. First, in the top left here, we plan on having a very large resource library on our website for all entity types, including private sector as well. But specifically regarding STEPS, we will have example reports, templates for things like ordinance and licensing language, guidance documents for different programs you might want to plan. And we also plan on holding workshops and webinars in the future specific to things that STEPS can help with, or just the public sector in general. If you would like to learn more about the program, though, if you want some help on maybe what resources could be helpful to you, or just discuss your community's needs for maybe a larger project, you're welcome to fill out our office hour inquiry form on our website. That's sort of how you get a hold of us and how we can start talking about these other levels of assistance that we have. Speaking of levels of assistance, we have light touch and in-depth assistance, and I will go through those in detail in the next couple of slides. So the quicker and shorter level of support that we offer is light touch assistance. This is intended for smaller projects that will be up to 6 months, and we anticipate to be 50 hours or less of consultation support from our experts in the field. So examples of this type of project would be something like light research leading to a city council presentation, light stakeholdering support, a minor update to maybe current ordinance language, anything that can essentially be done fairly quickly. And there is no application on the website or at all for the STEPS program. You can receive light touch assistance after filling out the office hour inquiry form and meeting with a member of our ODA team to determine that this is the best path for your community. These projects also do not need to be approved by the board of directors with light touch assistance. So projects can be executed pretty quickly. Once we know the details of the consultation that we'll be providing, a member of the ODA team will send an offer letter to you if you're the one applying. And once you reply to that email with acceptance of the terms, AKA the things that we're going to be completing, the number of hours we expect, then we are just good to start work. There's no signature required with light touch assistance. So in-depth assistance is for any project that is expected to be over that 50-hour mark of consultation support. And we'll offer up to around 18 months of assistance for this. So these are larger scale, complex projects like a regional waste study or planning for the rollout of a brand new program, a feasibility analysis, a behavior change campaign, anything that will take a longer amount of time to complete. And just like light touch assistance, if you're interested, you can sign up for office hours on our website, discuss your project idea with a member of the OTA team, and we can move down this pathway if that's what makes the most sense. One thing I really want to note is that it can take some time to figure out the specific work to be completed, to put together a proposal, and to receive approval from the board of directors that meet once a month. So I would say make sure to set aside a couple of months if you're interested in in-depth assistance just for that planning and that approval process. Another thing to note is that we will require a letter of engagement that's signed by your community leadership. So if you're a superintendent, or if you're a school district, we would like a letter from your superintendent. If you're a superintendent, that's great, sign the letter. Or if you're a municipality, we would like a leader like a mayor or a city manager to sign your letter of engagement. And then once we receive that signed letter of engagement, we will begin that proposal process, and then we can move forward with getting your project approved. So those are the two levels of assistance that we have. And I want to move on to a question that I think is on the mind of a fair amount of the state right now, and that is producer responsibility, or EPR. So some of you may not know what this is quite yet, so I'd like to explain it very briefly. Producer responsibility, which is otherwise known as EPR, was passed in the state of Colorado in 2022, and it will begin rolling out in the spring of 2026. But I want to note that this is anticipated to take a few years to reach everyone that's interested. The program requires companies that sell products in packaging and companies that sell paper products within the state of Colorado to fund a statewide recycling system to recycle those materials. They pay into a pot, essentially. And this fund will go back into communities, paying for 100% of all recycling costs, as long as that recycling is free to the public and is as convenient as trash. Now, that is a very high-level overview of Colorado's EPR. And if you're interested in learning more and understanding the specifics and how it could affect you or how you could use it to your advantage, I highly suggest finding information on CDPHE's webpage and the Circular Action Alliance website. I have those on the slide here, and we can also drop those in the chat. And one thing that I really want to stress with this is that C3 in STEPS is not an EPR program. We are not focused solely on helping communities prepare for EPR through STEPS, but if you have an idea as to how your community wants to prepare, the STEPS program can help with things like feasibility studies, helping with ordinance language or hauler licensing language, planning new programs, and anything that you think will be the best way to set your community up for EPR. So we are working closely with the organizations and departments that are implementing EPR so that we can really understand how we can better help everyone. But we do not make determinations as to how reimbursements work for the program and how the program will roll out or anything like that. So we're here to help if you want to be involved with EPR, but if you're looking to learn more about the specifics of EPR, then I highly suggest going to these websites and learning more about the program. So that is kind of STEPS and funding in a nutshell. And now I'll pass it off to Kathleen to talk about the programs that C3 has to offer for the private sector.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. So these are the final opportunities we'd like to go through today, and they are more focused on the private sector. The two opportunities we have are NextCycle Colorado and the Circular Economy Development Center, or CEDC for short. Both NextCycle and CEDC are technical assistance programs that are funded by C3, but they are entirely managed by separate groups, external consultants that run those programs and make sure that they're humming. These opportunities may help different organizations prepare to receive funding, but awarding funding is not a function of them. First up is NextCycle Colorado, and NextCycle is a 6-month business accelerator program that includes expert advice, a 3-day boot camp, and culminates in a pitch competition. The goal with NextCycle is to foster innovation within sustainable design, reuse, repair, recycling, composting, and recovery solutions, all focused on remanufacturing within Colorado. It aims to prepare teams for launching or expanding investable business ideas. This program is managed by RRS, Resource Recycling Systems, and they provide no-cost consulting along with a technical advisory committee of subject matter experts in material processing, manufacturing, financing, and market development. Who is eligible for the NextCycle program is basically any group with an investable project idea that supports end markets in Colorado. Teams can be part of the private sector, part of the public sector, or even a collaboration across both. It is more intended for startups, those project ideas that might be newer to market or not even in the market yet. And out-of-state participants can apply, but all of the project and business activities must occur in Colorado. This program is a little different from some of the other programs where it only has one application cycle and cohort per year. It is currently closed. We just launched the 6th cohort last month, and we are expecting the 2026 applications to be released later this year, sometime in the fall. Some of the benefits that participants of NextCycle can expect to receive are a structured program with personalized work plans based on where each team's business or idea is at, which allows them to receive tailored resources to really support their project, including mentorship, investor advice, business plan development, and a professional pitch recording. Again, the goal of this program is to help teams become investable, and the program has a high success rate of doing just that. Of the 42 participants that we've had since 2019, 83% of those are still in business. And while the program doesn't provide any direct funding, it has helped teams prepare to receive funding both from investors as well as approximately $3 million from a variety of state grants, including the RREO and FWRD programs. Moving forward, all participants who have completed the NextCycle program will receive a bonus point on any C3 funding applications. Next opportunity we want to talk about here is the Circular Economy Development Center. And the CEDC is both a market development and innovation hub for advancing the circular economy in Colorado. CEDC is managed by Lori Johnson's team at Circular Colorado and is a strategic partner to the NextCycle program. We have some members from CEDC that are on our technical advisory committee. And if you reach out to the CEDC, you may be advised to start with NextCycle first before receiving support from CEDC. So a sort of general way to think about the difference between NextCycle and CEDC is that generally NextCycle is going to be more for startups or early ideas, while the CEDC tends to focus on innovation and market development with ideas that are already in the market or prepared to go to market. The goal of CEDC is both to expand existing end markets that we have in Colorado, as well as build new end markets. And this is, CEDC is really focused on large, impactful circular solutions, and that includes all of the interconnected facets required for success, such as logistics, supply chain, collaboration, and partnerships. And again, the CEDC does not provide any direct funding, but they do help prepare projects to receive funding. And projects that are brought forward through the CEDC to the C3 Board of Directors will be kind of built in collaboration with the CEDC team, reviewed by the C3 team, and then eventually presented to the Board of Directors for approval. We wanted to provide just at least one example of a CEDC project that we're super excited about, which is the Circular Transportation Network. And this project is aimed at supporting rural recycling transportation challenges. It's a really exciting pilot that the CEDC has released and is working on right now. So it utilizes trucks to deliver loads to communities throughout the state. And instead of those trucks returning empty to the Front Range, the trucks are going to stop in communities along the way to backhaul the recyclable materials to a transload facility in Pueblo. Where they'll be aggregated and then baled and sent to local and regional end markets. This is a great example of a partnership, collaborative based solution that is helping the entire state, and is just one example of the types of projects that the CEDC works on. So if you're a small scale generator and you're interested in joining this proof of concept, you can learn more about it at the CEDC website. All right, so that wraps up our introduction to the C3 program. We just have a few quick next steps before we'll jump into the Q&A. For continuing to engage with our team, you've kind of heard it throughout this, but we do suggest first visiting our website, reading our strategic plan, as well as all the funding and steps information and the private sector information that's available. There is preliminary information on the funding available now, and as we've mentioned, the applications, the manuals, example contract templates, that pre-application video, that's all going to be posted onto the website at the end of this month. The team has worked really hard to make sure that everything is easy to understand, easy to apply, and as transparent as possible. We intend for this information to answer most of your questions and details about aligning with C3, but after reading the information, if you still have questions, or if you're part of the public sector and you're ready to discuss a STEPS project, then you can sign up for an office hour form through the form that's on our website. And in the future, the best way to be notified of when those applications are released and all those materials are released, as well as any other events and opportunities with C3, you can sign up for our newsletter using this QR code. And then on this page that the QR code takes you to, you'll also find all of the links to any upcoming and past events, news about C3 and where to follow us on social media. And with that, we'll move into Q&A. I'll pass it back over to Kendra.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. We do have a handful of questions in the Q&A, and I think there's more coming in. So we'll go ahead and start with some. Apologies in advance if we can't get to every single question. We do have to end the session on time, but just please keep in mind that we're going to have tons of additional information available on our website in the very near future by the end of the month. And you can always schedule an office hour with the Outreach and Technical Assistance team to discuss various other things. So with that, let's go to the first question. Kathleen, this one will be for you. Are there any areas in circularity where the programs are prioritizing funding?
Thanks, Kendra. That's a great question. So there are, like Liz mentioned, any project that aligns to our strategic plan is going to be prioritized. So for the mini and the impact, you do not necessarily have to align to the strategic plan, but if you do, that project is going to be prioritized. For the capacity building projects, you must align with at least one of the strategic goals in there. So again, read that strategic plan. That's the best way to understand how to prioritize your projects and how we would prioritize you. Brenda's going to drop the link to that strategic plan, but sort of if you wanted to put the strategic plan into themes or kind of buckets, it would be those three ones that Erin went over at the beginning. Equitable access and education statewide, material reduction and reuse, and retaining high value of materials that are in Colorado already.
So much, Kathleen. All right, the next question for you, Liz. Once an application has been approved by the C3 Board of Directors, how long will it take typically for entities to receive the funding?
That is another great question. So that is really going to depend on the tier of funding and the complexity of the project that you're applying for. Once an application is approved, we expect for mini grants around 60 days from approval for that contract to be executed, and up to 90 days when it comes to the impact grants. For capacity building grants, that time frame will depend on how complex the process is and the approval process by the board. But once any contract is executed, you can begin to make purchases, and reimbursements will come soon after you submit those necessary documentations like the proof of payment and all of that. But one thing to note while we're talking about this is we cannot provide reimbursements for purchases that were made before the contract is executed. So once the contract is executed, you can then purchase the equipment or whatever it is, or take possession. Taking possession of the materials is also something that you cannot do before the contract is executed if you want to be reimbursed.
So much, Liz. All right, Erin, this next one's for you. It's from Jason. Jason asks, can you talk a little bit about the evaluation criteria that will be used to judge or evaluate projects and how that will be made available?
Yes, absolutely. So all of the evaluation criteria will be available in the grant manuals that are being published at the end of February. So in the interest of time, I would just encourage you to read through the evaluation criteria. It's put in great detail in the manuals, and those will be coming soon.
So much, Erin. Kathleen, question from Scott. Given the huge budget shortfall in Colorado due to Tabor, will there be an impact in terms of available grant funds?
Yeah, so great question. Since C3 is an enterprise, we are exempt from Tabor, so we're not anticipating any funding impacts based on Tabor.
Thank you, Kathleen. Okay, here's a great one, I think, for you, Liz. If an applicant doesn't have upfront capital to support their project, will there be resources to bridge that funding gap until reimbursement begins?
So there will be an opportunity for an upfront payment. It can only be up to 25% of that entire project cost, and it is only going to be if the need for that upfront payment is really proven to the C3 team. So that'll be something that we will have to discuss and ensure that need is really required. But if there's no way for you to have the funding to be able to put at least some of that up front before receiving reimbursement, we have that option. That being said, I just want to note, I'm not sure if it's just how I read the question or how I heard it, but reimbursements will be happening on an ongoing basis throughout the project as well. So the reimbursement doesn't happen only at the very end. If you were to purchase something, and let's say you purchase a piece of equipment, some signage or something, and it arrives and you have that proof that you paid for it, you can submit a reimbursement request right away, and then we'll be able to reimburse you, usually within a couple of weeks of that reimbursement request coming through and being approved.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, next question, Erin. Can you share a little bit, and I know it could take some time, but give us a brief overview of how decisions on grants will be made, who will be approving them? Will it be staff, or will there be an internal, external / review committee?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what the C3 Board of Directors is charged with. With the mini grant criteria in particular, they have given approval for the staff to be the main reviewer on those projects in particular, since they're lower risk and lower dollar amount. The staff will be taking those to the board periodically, stating, the projects that were awarded under the mini grant and providing regular updates to the Board of Directors on those. As a result of that, they might get some feedback from the board and some further direction on projects that they're more interested or direction that they'd like the staff to take those. But for the impact grants and the capacity grants, those all need to be approved by the Board of Directors. So those will be taken to the board as the applications are complete.
Thank you, Erin. I'm going to take this next question because I needed to get the correct answer for it. Question from Erica. Because this enterprise is now open to the full state, do we expect to increase the funding beyond 18 million? And so essentially, Erica, the statute requires a stakeholder feedback report with any proposed changes to the enterprise. That would be a discussion point in terms of fee revenue at that point in time. So I hope that is helpful. All right, Liz, let me toss this one to you. Are the first two levels of the STEPS assistance, resources and office hours, free and available to all, even without an application?
Yes, absolutely. Really, all of the levels are free and available to all. But the resources within the next couple of months will be posted on our website. And we'll continuously add to those as we continue to create new resources and have other projects that might be able to be duplicated in any way for other communities. And then our office hour form is actually already on our website. So you can go to the website, click engage with us, scroll down a little bit, and you can fill out an office hour form with information about the project or any questions that you have, and we can talk through things.
Thank you so much. Going through, we have quite a list of questions, sorry. A question from Austin. I'm going to toss this one to you, Kathleen. Would we be able to utilize the deep technical assistance, the more in-depth projects, and apply for a funding opportunity during the same year?
Yeah, great clarification there. The once per year award for the funding is entirely separate from the STEPS technical assistance, whether that's, free resources, a light touch project, or an in-depth project. Those do not have any correlation to the one funding award per year, so you can utilize both in the same calendar year.
So much, Kathleen. Erin, question here from Newberg. Are private organizations outside of Colorado eligible for funding?
So your project ultimately has to impact the circular economy in Colorado. So if you are an entity that already exists somewhere else and you're interested in possibly opening up a new branch here in Colorado or doing some type of work here in Colorado, that could be eligible. But if your program is something that is just, working on like a national level, that would not be eligible.
Thank you, Erin. And I do want to remind folks, we're not going to address any specific project questions. At this particular time, we're going to release a whole lot of information late February that will help you with that. And we will have office hours available as well to address those. Okay, here's a great question for you, Liz. Is a local match required for any funding tier or opportunity?
That is a fantastic question. I know in the past, in some of our past grant programs, we have required a match, but we will not require any match for any funding opportunities. Of course, if you have a match that could show financial viability for the project, it could strengthen potentially some applications, but it's not something that we're going to be requiring. I guess a good thing to mention is that there's no financial match when it comes to the technical assistance program that we have, but we will require some administrative hours. Somebody's going to have to work on that project with us to create the project and then work through whatever that project is with the STEPS program for technical assistance. So no financial required matches anywhere. But there is some time requirements. Same with funding. There's definitely some time requirements to be able to work through that project and meet all contractual obligations.
Liz? Kathleen, question here from Mark. Will funds still be allocated between the Front Range and rural Colorado as they were with the RREO and FWRD programs, or is funding mixed?
It is one statewide program, so the funding is mixed. There is, within the legislation, there's a requirement for us to equitably distribute to rural and underserved areas of the state. And in our strategic plan, you will see a lot of focus on that. So, it is statewide. the Front Range and the greater parts of the state will all receive, funding and assistance from the 1C3 fund, but we are, there is some priority around servicing those underserved communities.
So much. Erin, we have a question from Beth. Says that we noted in the mini grant discussion that we cannot apply for funding on an existing project. Can the impact grants funding cover existing projects?
Yes, and just one clarification on that. So it was specifically operating expenses that were ineligible for the mini grant funding. So, staff personnel time, contractual costs, things like that, that are just part of your day-to-day operations. That's not eligible for mini, but it is eligible for the impact grants. But as far as, mini grants, if you have an existing program that you really need some extra equipment for, some supplies or something like that, that would still be eligible. It's just the operating expenses that are not.
Thank you so much. Liz, if an organization has received previous RREO funds, are they ineligible to apply for any of these funding opportunities?
If you have received past grant funds, forward or RREO, you are still eligible. And our only really restraint with that, with receiving past grants, is that within the calendar year, if you've received an award, you'll have to wait until the next calendar year to receive another award. And we have not had any RREO and forward requests for applications within this last calendar year. So if you've had one in the past, you are perfectly welcome to start applying once applications are open at the end of this month.
Thank you so much, Liz. So if I'm understanding the question from Matt, it says, can you talk about how specific the focus on Colorado needs to be? For example, Colorado and other states, Colorado, or nationally? But I think what Matt wants to know is, can the outcome of the project be national or beyond Colorado, rather than just focused in Colorado? The project has to be in Colorado. So Matt, I hope I'm getting that correctly. Anybody feel comfortable taking that?
I'll take a stab at it. So I think if I'm understanding correctly, I see here it's talking about like waste stream equals Colorado and other states. Really what we want to be, what we're looking for the projects is that they're creating circular models in Colorado. So, if you're taking waste or byproduct that's generated here in Colorado and then putting that back into the market, that's really what we're looking for. If those materials do end up getting sold out of state, it might depend on the specifics of the project. So I would encourage you to reach out for an office hour appointment. But we don't necessarily have restrictions that your end market product or something only has to be sold in Colorado. So there is that opportunity to have more of a national presence. As far as bringing in waste or byproduct from another state and receiving Colorado state funding on that we would need to have a little bit more information on. Really, the fee is or the program is funded by tipping fees in Colorado. So we're really looking to take waste out of the stream here in Colorado. So as much as your solution could be taking waste generated here in Colorado and bringing it back into the market and recirculating it, that's what we're really looking for.
Good job, Erin. Thank you so much. Question for Liz. Why are capacity building grant requests by invitation only, and how can an organization receive an invitation to apply?
Yeah, so really capacity building projects need to align with C3's strategic plan, and they are really intended for these large catalytic projects. So our goal with these types of projects is to work with you to co-create that proposal that will go to the board. Ultimately, we really want to talk through the specifics to ensure that this is meeting our mission, vision, and values for that large investment of a project. So that's kind of why they're invitation only. We want it to be a conversation before we put this in front of the board for approval and before really all specifics are figured out. But if you're interested in applying, you can fill out our office hour inquiry form on our website, and then we can sort of begin that conversation after talking through your project idea and the specifics of what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Liz. Question for you, Erin. Are there any specific formatting guidelines for the application materials such as work plans, budgets, etc.?
Yes, and that will be made available at the end of February as well. There will be a few templates for your applications, including a work plan template and a budget template. So those will be made available with the application links. But if you ever need assistance in filling out any of those templates, the Outreach and Technical Assistance team is also here to support you in that.
Thank you so much. Erin, another one for you. Can grant funds be used to fund consultants or subcontractors?
Yes, that's no problem. There are a few caveats on that, so it depends on the specific consultant and work that you're trying to get done. If you are a public sector entity, I would encourage you to take a look at the STEPS program. That is specifically designed to provide those consulting hours at no cost to the community or to the local government. So, for planning assistance, feasibility studies, things of that nature. If you need a specific consultant, like an engineer or something to help with, an engineering design and operations plan or something a bit more technical for infrastructure development, that is something that a grant would definitely support.
So much. And I think we have reached the end of our questions. Wait another couple minutes for one or two more to pop in. Ask the panel if there's anything else they thought of that they'd like to share that maybe we didn't touch on or answer fully.
I did just answer via typing one of the questions. With the office hours, we are looking to have project information. So some kind of idea. It doesn't have to be like, as much detail as you have is beneficial for us to have an efficient conversation with you. But if you don't have a project idea yet, you can, email the C3 team, and I put that in the chat, and it's also available on our website.
And it looks like we have someone who's having trouble submitting an office hour form. Maybe they could reach out via the email address, and we'll see if we can assist them. One more question here from David. In the past, with RREO awards, the product procurement was intensely specific, such as vehicle ID numbers with new trucks. Sometimes, however, the products that you were hoping to purchase changed because of availability and various other things. Will there be flexibility for funding general items, but not necessarily for exact items with our new program?
I'll take this one. So ultimately, when it comes to applying for funding, we will need things like vendor quotes in order to ensure that the amount that's on the budget does match what you're generally trying to purchase. That being said, when it comes to actual contracting, and this is going to be very dependent project by project, but ultimately we have in the past always tried to be a little bit more generalized with that. So let's say, for example, you want to purchase a very specific type of forklift. We would have a quote for that forklift when you apply so that we know the general amount, and that amount that you're applying for is the amount that will be in your contract. But let's say later on that forklift is not available anymore. The budget itself would likely not include the specific model number of the forklift that you had on your application. So it would be a little bit more generalized. You would still need to purchase the same equipment, but it might not be the exact same one that you had on a vendor quote. So hopefully that helps answer your question a little bit. But ultimately, the idea is that we want the the project to be fulfilled in the way that it was originally proposed. So if there are a couple of small things like the equipment slightly changes model number, but it's still the same thing, that's something that we can work with you after your contract is executed.
Thank you so much, Liz. Kathleen, I think we touched on this, but not exactly this question. How long will it take applications to be reviewed? And basically that time line before an applicant finds out that they have been approved or declined for a grant?
Yep, so this is just really going to depend on the tier of the funding and the complexity of the project. Once an application is approved, we expect about 60 days from approval for mini grants for that contract to be executed, and up to 90 days for finalizing and executing an impact grant contract. For the large capacity building grants, the time frame for a decision is really going to depend on complexity, the approval process by the board. So you definitely want to build in some time for these larger projects to go both through the approval, the invitation process, the proposal process, getting approval from the board, and then once that contract or once that proposal is approved and we start building the contract, once it's executed, that's when you can start to make purchases and get reimbursements. So, really, if you have a capacity building grant idea, I would allow as much time as possible.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Liz, question for you. Could you explain the definition of underrepresented community used in our strategic plan? Is it specifically just for communities outside of the Front Range?
This is a fantastic question. So I don't have the strategic plan right in front of me, but I know that it states including rural areas as part of the definition. Honestly, like when it comes to underrepresented communities, rural communities tend to be very underrepresented. So that is going to be a focus when it comes to scoring in the future and all of that for scoring for underrepresented communities. But it won't solely be that. We're really focused heavily on access and providing access to services that were not provided before. So a community that is in an environmental justice area and maybe doesn't have access to composting, that could be considered an underrepresented community if your project is focused on something like composting and providing that access. It's a little bit open-ended for a reason, because we want to make sure that we're including everyone who really, really needs the services or whatever it is that you may be able to provide. But rural areas absolutely are included within the definition of underrepresented as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz, Erin, Kathleen. We have no more questions. And thank you, Megan and Brenda in the background, typing furiously to answer questions. And thank you to everyone who attended today. I know several people have had to drop off. They've let me know, but we really appreciate you spending some time with us to get to know our program, and just want to remind you that we will have more information coming out later this month, at the very end of the month, in fact. And that we are available via email for general questions and for office hours regarding anything specific. Oh, one more last question from Austin, and I can answer that. Generally, no, we cannot purchase real property, real estate with our grant program. So hopefully that's helpful. All righty. Well, thank you all once again. And I hope you have a great day, and we look forward to seeing your applications come in the near future.